Hello, welcome to The Local Perspective. I'm Jerry Deshane, Executive Director of the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, and we're going to start with quiz time. Where is the second largest collection of feature films in the world? Know the answer? Madison, Wisconsin. I'm talking with the Executive Director, the Ruth and Hartley Barker Director, of the Wisconsin Historical Society, Christian Overland. Good morning, Christian.
Hello, Jerry. It's great to be here with you.
Great to be here. No way. Really?
Oh, the film collection?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great treasure. No one really knows about it outside of some scholars in Hollywood. And we have actually the United Artists Collection going back to 1919 through 1965, and then various other collections too, including, do you remember the Mary Tyler Moore Show?
Of course.
We have her entire collection of her enterprise. So
all the MTM?
Hill Street Blues, St. Elsewhere, all those productions and scripts. We even have the Gone with the Wind script too.
The script?
Yep, from the movie. So thinking about the archive, the film, the letters that people going back and forth about the movies themselves, all that's in Wisconsin at the Wisconsin Historical Society.
That's incredible. Now, is that stuff all locked up and hidden in a deep, dark vault somewhere?
What's hidden in a vault?
I know you won't let me touch it.
It's in a brand new facility that we call the State Archive Preservation Facility that we just got done with construction. So we're moving the film vault in by the end of this year. And what it is, basically, it's a 39-degree film vault area. So yes, it is dark because we want to preserve the images, and we keep it that constant, but then we bring it out for researchers.
That is amazing. We're going to have a free conversation about history, not just Wisconsin history. Christian's background is fascinating, and you and I had lunch a few weeks ago, and the Wisconsin Historical Society, first of all, has been around longer than Wisconsin's been a state, right?
That's correct. 1846, one of the earliest historical societies in the United States.
So pre-Civil War, Wisconsin had a big role in the Civil War, but the Historical Society in Wisconsin kind of had a unique national role as an archive of sorts.
Right, and so think about that 1846, we're a territory at that point in time, not a state, but they had an idea of creating this repository out in the territory for the new citizens, and then connecting them to what was going on the East Coast for the beginning of our country, as far as, the new Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. So we have the first printing of the Constitution. We have letters from Thomas Jefferson. We have a letter from Thomas Jefferson to George Clark stating he wanted to go out north to the northwest and explore. Of course, that's the Lewis and Clark journey.
Yeah.
So we have all that. And we've continued collecting national stories. Even today, we're collecting national stories.
How come nobody knows this? I never knew this, and I'm a lifelong Wisconsinite.
Well, that's why I came to Wisconsin.
We're going to talk about that,
to democratize the collection. And it's been known by scholars, but really what we want to do is create access to this, to the films, to the papers, so people can actually connect to it. And another hidden secret is, the University of Wisconsin affiliate system, we have archivists out there. And people can walk into like UW Superior and request to see the script from Gone with the Wind. And we'll bring it up there so they can see it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you've got some exciting plans for the future, but we talked earlier, I want to hold that for the end of the show, how we're going to open this up, how we're going to make this more available. Let's talk a little bit about where you came from right before Wisconsin. You've been here about 6 months, you said?
That's correct. February 12th I started.
And where were you before that?
The Henry Ford, which is a museum complex in Dearborn, Michigan.
And I've been there.
Good.
It is one of the most amazing museums on earth.
Well, thank you for saying so. I was there for 26 years.
Wow. Yeah. So, and in that 26-year period, the Henry Ford went through some pretty dramatic changes, did it not?
Oh, correct. We were a Henry Ford Museum in Greenville Village, so a 12-acre museum that basically 405,000 square feet of exhibition space in Greenville Village, an outdoor history museum that had Thomas Edison's Menlo Park, as well as the Wright Brothers Bicycle Shop at 81 historic structures from all around the United States, to adding the Ford Rouge Factory Tour, which actually allows people to understand labor relations, one of the most important labor sites in North America, to the research library, to a school. So I was in charge of Henry Ford Academy, which is a public high school there.
A functioning public high school?
Yes, 512 students inside the museum.
Boy, I probably wouldn't have skipped quite so many classes had I had that, but that's another story.
And now calling Henry Ford Museum the Henry Ford Museum of American Innovation.
And it's amazing. I mean, I was there, folks, and they had presidential limos. I mean, you've got the Kennedy limo.
The Kennedy limo.
The Kennedy, which it shocked me to learn when I was there that that car was used after the Kennedy assassination.
Correct. Actually, Ford Motor Company had loaned, all the way going back to FDR, the presidential vehicles because they built them and they would just change them out on loan. So when President Kennedy was assassinated, that car was brought back up to Dearborn, actually right across the street from the museum, and re-armored, and LBJ was in that car less than 90 days later.
That's incredible.
Yep.
I guess if you were LBJ, would you have gotten in that car? No way.
That's a fascinating question. I think every historian wanted to ask that question. We don't know the answer to that, but it was faster to protect the president that way rather than starting from scratch.
And I don't want to put you on the spot. I promise I won't turn this into a history quiz, but you have Teddy Roosevelt's carriage.
That's correct.
What was the first presidential limo? Whose was it?
Well, the first presidential limo, I think you can go back to basically the electric car, a Baker electric car with Woodrow Wilson. Every president used carriages until Woodrow Wilson used a Baker electric to get around. It has the presidential seal on it. And that's in the collection of the Henry Ford, too.
That's kind of funny if you think about it. We had electric cars before gasoline-powered cars. Now we're going back.
Well, fascinating time.
So the Rouge, the River Rouge plant was this incredible, massive, I mean, it sort of created, or what's the word I'm looking for? It was the industrial age, right? Now,
oh, absolutely.
Obviously, the whole plant is not there. What's there?
Oh, the plant never shut down.
Mm-hmm.
It still continues today, and it's morphed over time. So in its day to World War I, celebrating that issue that is coming up, a war of 100 years this year, the Armistice Day, the Rouge was part of that, building Eagle boats. Okay. And then in the 20s, building Model A's. Actually, from Superior, Wisconsin, ore would come through the boats, through the locks, right, and enter the Rouge. And 72 hours later, that ore would come off the line in the form of a Model A car. And that's amazing. And they ship these cars around the world.
That is amazing. By the way, if you're ever up on Lake Superior in Upper Michigan, there are still Ford plants that you can still see. I think one is converted into an apartment building. Right on the shore. You still have the big old rusty Ford water tower there.
Yep. And actually, we were talking about recently in Superior, the J.B. Ford ore boat, one of the last ore boats that Henry Ford had, that he had built, is still going, and we don't know what's going to happen to it. People are still talking about it.
Have you kind of called dibs on it? That
it's a big object for the Historical Society collection, but not a bad idea.
Yeah, you did the Henry Ford, man. I have faith in you. You can make this work. Well, let's kind of turn it back to Wisconsin a little bit and talk about, I know that in my hometown of Crivets, there's a lot of people that are history buffs. They're very active. Basically, every city in Wisconsin that's got any time to it at all has a very active historical component, whether it's an actual society or not. Can you help them? I mean, do you ever have, hey, you might want to take a look at our collection kind of thing?
Absolutely. And going back to the 19th century, why we were founded as a historical society was to help the citizenry. So 1898, legislation enacted that allowed the Historical Society to work with all 72 counties to connect local history and develop a network. Today, through that legislation, we have 407 historical societies and organizations that we work with. And every year we do an annual conference. So we also have people that are assigned to the northern region and the southern region of Wisconsin that actually live in those regions that work with all of those historical societies to help bring technical assistance as well as listen to what issues they have of governance or things that they need. We're there for them.
So if I'm, say Peshtigo, let's pick Peshtigo, Peshtigo Fire, well-researched, how would they know if you have anything that could be useful to them, or that perhaps a picture they'd want copied or on rented, or I don't know what, loaned, is that the term you use? How do you go about that? How do you know?
So what we do is we digitize the collections, but we also have finding aids for all of our collections too. We have the largest North American history collection, only second to the Library of Congress. And so if you think about photographs from the Peshtigo fire or other things around the United States, we're constantly creating access to that. And what a finding aid is basically a whole page of systems of how you where things in folders. And the next evolution, of course, is digitizing things. So when people are Googling or using their favorite search engine, they find about the Peshtigo fire that we want our images to pop up, and then they can use them. And we're very upfront about people can use our images for educational purposes. If they want to publish a book, give us a call. We'll give you a high-res copy too.
And royalty fees or whatever, nothing like that, or
it's
modest?
a different fee structure, sure, because for the resolution
for the
and stuff
cost
and pays for the cost, yeah. But we're there for the people.
I need to back up. You just sort of offhandedly said that you have the second largest collection of North American history.
Yep. In the United States, which is actually the world.
How does this happen? I mean, Wisconsin we weren't one of the latest states, but I mean, we're right kind of sort of in the middle of the country,
Yeah.
both in time and place. So we're not the oldest, we're not the newest, we're not the West. Why is this such a repository?
I think we do things different in Wisconsin. We're very interested in figuring out things quickly. We have this kind of ingenious mindset to fix things and get things done, do things for our own people. That's a Midwestern value too to hold on to.
Okay.
So from the building of the Wisconsin Historical Society in 1846 to this legislation in 1898, then enacted it to work with all 72 counties, to building this massive history collection. The reason why is because we felt that's what the citizens needed, and we still do it today. The thing is, Jerry, we're the best state historical society in the United States, hands down.
You're not just boasting.
No, and here's why. The collection, that's one reason. Educationally, we publish the best state history book in the United States. My colleagues are jealous of the 4th grade textbook we publish. The reason why is that it's also used by the teachers. Over 65% of our teachers use that textbook in the classes. The State Historic Preservation Office that we have is very progressive in terms of education. We have a huge tax credit program that helps out developers. But
Helps out downtown communities.
Right.
tremendously.
And rather than just saying we have a program, we go out there and do industrial surveys or surveys that helps the developers so they know which buildings are already ready to go. So we're very good at educating the public about what we can offer. The other part are 12 sites and museums. Outstanding. From Old World, Wisconsin to the Madeline Island Museum to Prairie du Chien and Villa Louis on the Mississippi River. Mm-hmm. Incredible resources for the state. There's no one else like us with a national history collection. And that's a big differentiator. No one in the state organizations has that type of a collection. So what we want to be able to do is connect to people around the world with it.
And this is going to get back to the big thing, where you're going next. But I don't want to go there yet. Don't force me to go there yet, even though I'm dying to. Where was I going to go? Oh, yeah. So you've been here 6 months. And I'm sure you've been kind of bopping around in those closets and those vaults. And what's the coolest thing you found so far?
Well, there's a number of them, and it's quite amazing. So I love context, and as a storyteller, as a historian, I love how do you put artifacts together. And so we have 27,000 maps in our collection. We have the oldest surviving map in the entire world that shows North America on it, 1515. And it's a Spanish map that was drawn out, and it shows North America on the far west right there. And it's the first one that did it, and it's the oldest surviving. So take a map, and then think about what's going on in the young republic that we have, and think about newspapers. So how do people transfer information? So a map was used to talk about the United States, or this not the United States, the North American continent back then. And then our newspaper collection, like the first printing of the Constitution by the Philadelphia Packet. When I looked at that, when I saw that and know that people held that copy on the day the Constitution was ratified, that's how our country was transmitted throughout the colonies at that point in time. It became states immediately. That moved me. That really moved me.
That is incredible.
The other thing I would say too that I find fascinating is we have a moon rock from one of the Apollo missions.
Did they drop it or something?
So from that to letters, from Daniel Boone's papers,
With Daniel Boone's papers.
Yes, Daniel Boone's genealogy.
How does stuff like that end up in our museum in particular, but any museum?
So that person that brought it in was the first director, Draper. And Mr. Draper had a vision of connecting all these together. I think that the idea of a society is rather than being reactive to something, to be proactive. That's who we are too, which is a big differentiator in the world. We're not waiting only for history to happen 30 years and saying what happened 30 years ago. We're collecting things. So in the American Civil War, Draper sent out with soldiers journals and pencils,
Yeah.
and said, you know, can you write down what was going on and then return them to that? We have all those diaries now in the Wisconsin Historical Society. So from that to we're filming buildings going up today with drones to trying to, you know, figure out the landscape changes. And oral histories. We conducted oral histories at the Oscar Mayer Wiener plant. And we collect the Wienermobile too.
You got one?
We got 1969. It's awesome.
I read Auto Trends or Car and Driver. They did a review of that as a sports car vehicle.
Yeah.
It didn't look good.
Pretty funny.
Didn't look good there. Okay, we have all of this, and I mean, my ignorance, I wasn't aware of it, but I think a lot of people are in the same boat. So, what's your vision? I know you've got a big idea of where you want to take all this. Tell me where you're going.
So we have a state museum across the street from the Capitol in Madison. And it's an old hardware store. So it had its good time in the sense of, you know, moving the collection there in the 1980s. But we've outgrown it. So many kids can't get in today because it's become so popular. It's actually a nice problem to have in the sense of history's become so popular today. School students are coming in, you know, to see people, but we can't handle the crowds. So we have to change the building. So we're going to build a new museum, and we're slated to open that up in 2024. But it's not just a museum of bricks and mortar, the idea is. It's a museum for the citizens in all 72 counties. So what we're designing into it to expose and create connections to this North America history collection as well as the state's collection is a digital network that people will be able to bring up presentations, our curators. We actually have been testing this idea, talking to people about it. We have 3 underwater archaeologists, marine archaeologists.
On staff, full-time?
Full-time. And the reason why is because we have collections that are in the Great Lakes.
Oh, sure, the wreck.
Those wrecks,
shipwrecks.
those wrecks are actually collections of the society. And so what we do is we monitor those collections, we take care of them, but wouldn't it be fabulous to be down there with GoPro cameras and a mic and then talk to school children all around the state about what's going on with history? So it brings history alive. So our idea with the new museum is to democratize this collection, democratize the museums, these experiences, and bring it to people where they need it. Yes, people can come to Madison to see this new museum, but in Superior, you're 6 hours away. In Green Bay, about 3.5 hours away. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a national speaker to actually present that and connect to people all around the state in their own museums? And since we have that network, we can do that. So we're going to build the bricks and mortar museum and a digital system to do that.
What makes, I should stop here. I'm sorry, I knew I'd get wrapped up in this conversation. My guest is Christian Øverland. Christian is the Ruth and Hartley Barker Director of the Wisconsin State Historical Society. Christian, what makes a good 21st century museum? What separates it from, you know, an old dark and dusty thing I don't want to go into?
That's a great question, Jerry. So first of all, people want an authentic experience. They want real objects, but they want to share those objects. And if they can't get to the museum, they want to understand those objects in a different way rather than just a photograph. Yeah. So creating a digital program where people can act and engage with it, that's one thing. So we're pushing the idea. We're doing something that hasn't been done yet, and that is this idea of a digital network where people can be in Superior and not just listen to the presentation, but we'll have on the screen Superior, a big screen next to the presenters, so they can ask them questions, meaning the presenters can say, is there a question from Superior? And Superior will be like in a town hall format. They can stand up and say, yeah, I have a question. So that engagement, whether it's an authentic experience with an object or an engagement where they can participate, is absolutely necessary for a 21st century museum. People want to participate. They want that dynamic experience. They also want to leave their own memories too. They feel that they're connected to that, and so we need to be relevant. The museum has to be not just stories of way in the past, but connecting those stories today that are meaningful. So one of the things that we're going to do is, with this great collection, is we're going to have newspapers, all the headlines of today, wherever they are in the state and across the United States, we're going to do that. So people can walk in the museum, and every day we're going to change that front page. And we're going to have 100 years earlier than that, because we have those in the collection. So it's a way to be relevant, connecting stories from the past to today. So, simple answer to your question, people want to be educated, they want to be engaged, but they want a meaningful memory that will last a lifetime. That's a 21st century museum.
Now, you're running all over the state. We're recording this today in Stoughton, Wisconsin, but you were just up in Superior.
Correct.
You're talking to people about this all over the state. You're meeting with the Native American tribes.
Yeah, all 12 nations. Yeah.
Why are you doing? What are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to learn?
Well, so if this is the People's Museum, we need to build it so they can use it. And so rather than trying to guess what they need in Bayfield, or guess what they need in Kenosha, or guess what they need in Cassville, we're talking with them. So we have a 33 city tour in all 12 nations between now and next May. And that's actually, we're taking our concept with them and asking, does this work? So does the digital piece work? And we're actually learning a lot, too, about what stories are personally hugely relevant to them.
Like what? Give me an example. Can you?
Oh, so like being in Superior, the harbor story, that it's the 17th largest harbor in the United States, and that it's the greatest harbor in the Great Lakes system, and how many tonnages of iron ore have come out of that. The Arsenal Democracy story. So, and not just for Wisconsin, but shipping ore all around the world, feeding the world they're talking about. And they were saying, do you realize how much grain comes out of here that goes across the world?
Superior, sure.
Yeah, out of Superior. And we do forget about that. But they were like, we need to tell this story because it is a important story for Wisconsin. And then I said, this is local history at its best. It's a local story with regional impact and national and world impact too. Superior is that. It's an important story for the world to know about.
Christian, are you worried? I mean, history hasn't stopped just because we're here now, right?
That's correct.
But so much of what we're doing is now electronic, and frankly, it feels more ephemeral. Mm-hmm. Are you worried that we're going to start losing critical pieces, and that 100 years from now, people aren't really going to understand this time because we don't have newspapers to the degree that we did?
Yeah. So I am concerned about it, and so are archivists and curators. And it's a wise thing to be concerned about, because if you're not ready to collect digital stories, digitally born artifacts, whether it's a photograph or whether it is a manuscript or whether it's an email, we're going to miss all that. So we're on top of it, but more importantly, we're talking to companies that are alive today too, and saying, remember us, in terms of like saving this, we can help you. So we're starting to actually work with a variety of companies as well as other historical organizations to figure out how to collect this stuff. Data, storage is huge too.
Yep.
But there are places like the supercomputer data center in San Diego that helps museums out, and they move the data across their network and grid around the United States. So we also want to collect it dynamically. Rather than just a screenshot, if we're going to collect a company's website, for instance, we want to be able to collect it on how people used it. Wow. So, but this is an early part of the process. Okay. We're doing those things now. Could we be doing better? Sure. But I also think of organizations are starting to figure it out too. Like, what do they collect in email? Do they collect every email, for a certain amount of time? And how do they hold on to it? What's meaningful and what isn't? So it's part of the new world.
The road trip that you're on, and this will be going on, as you said, through spring. Our cities and villages, I know almost all of them are very interested in this subject. It's part of who they are. It's placemaking.
Right.
How do they interact with the tour? What can they bring to the table that's most interesting? And then I guess practically, how do they find out when the next one is?
So people can go to wisconsinhistory.org and go to our website. We're in the lower part of the website, in the lower right-hand corner. You can click on Share Your Voice.
Wisconsinhistory.org.
That's our website.
Lower right-hand corner.
And Share Your Voice. And you'll see a digital map with all the sites.
Okay.
And you can see, actually click on some of the sites where we've already been. You can see some videos and different things from what's happened. We encourage people, because we planned this out, so people hopefully don't have more than 30 minutes of drive time to get to a site from where they live. So we can't visit every community, but we try to figure out, hey, can we spread this around so people can connect to it? So when we were in Superior, we did have people that drove an hour and a half away. But we're going to be in Bayfield and Ashland too. And so they can see what's coming up, they can see the date, and the big thing about it is they don't have to be a museum designer, they don't have to be a historian. They can be a teacher, a family member, an individual, a city council person, they can be anyone. We just want to talk with them and hear their stories. So we're not just presenting, but we're listening. And that's a key thing about this. We call them the feedback sessions of sharing your voice.
Okay. Okay, well, we've got just a few minutes left. Boy, and there's so many places I want to go, but probably can't. You're planning this museum. It's 2018. The opening is in 2024.
That's correct.
Why is it going to take so long? I want this open next year. I do.
Okay. Well,
I have grandkids. I want to bring them.
I want it open up too. So, and actually, two governors, Governor Thompson, and Governor Doyle, James Doyle, are co-chairs of our campaign. So they're saying the same thing. We got to get this done so we can open up for our grandchildren.
I used to work for those gentlemen. They're not patient people.
No, they're not. They're good, but they're very helpful in connecting us to the community. And honestly, they're going out there too. So some people may see them in their community together too. They've united, in this effort to build this new museum. So what's going on right now is we're finishing the fundraising, and then we need to go with 35% of the plans and get the architecture improved with the state. And then when that happens, it's a go.
Great, terrific.
Yeah. And it takes a long time because it's different than building an office building where you put a desk and a chair in it. You have to build these environments for all the collections, and we have to actually deinstall the museum. There's a lot of collections in it before we take it down because we're building it on the same spot.
Right, and that's not just when I move my office, I just throw stuff in a box. You don't quite do it that way.
A lot of careful packing. Yeah, even the Hartley in there is carefully packed.
Christian, you did a phenomenal job with the Henry Ford
Thank you.
in Detroit, and I can't wait for this. This is going to be a United States centerpiece. Mm-hmm. What's your personal, when are you going to sit back and go, nailed it?
So I never sit back in my life and said, nailed it. It's a personal philosophy. But I do take the time to look at it with the team and say, we've done a great job. And one of the things I think that we're all really eager to get to is when we open the doors, what's the next exhibit we're going to open up inside? Because we're going to have a traveling exhibit gallery in there. And so it'll be, what's the next one? So I always think about, in my work as a museum historian, what's the next exhibition or the next project? So we're looking forward to giving this to the state so they can enjoy it for future generations for the next few hundred years.
Absolutely amazing. Christian Øverland, the Ruth and Hartley Barker Director of the Wisconsin Historical Society, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, Jerry.
And go to wisconsinhistory.org, lower right-hand corner, look for the schedule, and tell your community story. I'm Jerry Deshane. This has been The Local Perspective.